Take 6.
Biographies, rewrite your history, light up your wildest dreams, museum victories. Every day we wanted everything, wanted everything. Mama said, don't give up, it's a little complicated. All tied up, no more love, and I'd hate to see you waiting. Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes. Had to have high hopes for a living, didn't know how, but I always had a feeling I was gonna be that one in a million. Always had high hopes. Always had high hopes. Always had high hopes. Mama said.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the Concerned Sports Fan YouTube channel. We are on video number 7 out of 10 on the road to a new camera. Now, if you guys have watched my last video with the World Series, thank you very much, because that video is doing really well when it comes to views. The Dodger video is still climbing when it comes to views, and if you haven't seen either of those videos, I will leave a link for it right up here, so that way you guys can check it out if you guys are done watching this video. Basketball season is finally back, and by the time you guys are watching this video, I would probably already have watched maybe a couple games, just to get my thoughts on how I think the season's going to be going. By this point, everybody should have played their first game already, but I wanted to reserve some thoughts here and there just so I can know what I really feel about the NBA and what I really have looking forward to it. I didn't want to go unprepared into the video, so I took my time, wrote down a couple notes, and now I'm going to let you guys know on what I think is going to be going down in this 2019-2020 NBA season. Without further ado, guys, let's get into the video right now. Coffee's good. Coffee's good. Now, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, the NBA season is back. 2019-2020 has started off with a bang, with the LA Clippers knocking off the LA Lakers in Game 1 of 82 of this long NBA season. And also, the Toronto Raptors had their ring ceremony night where they faced off against the New Orleans Pelicans without Zion Williamson, unfortunately, who will be out for the next foreseeable future. But they still did pretty good work. They still took care of them. They won in overtime. So, Toronto off with an early lead in the win column. And with the Pelicans, unfortunately, without Zion Williamson, we don't know what they're going to be looking like for the foreseeable future. But what I'm looking forward to is in the Western Conference, it's going to be so open now because there's so many new players that are in the Western Conference. A lot of these teams look completely different than what they did a year ago. So now the league and the season and the whole conference is wide open. Think about it. Over the last 5 years, we had the Warriors in the NBA Championship with a part of the Cavaliers and then also with the Toronto Raptors. Now, in those 5 seasons, the Warriors won 3 out of the last 5, but now it looks like Klay Thompson's going to be out for at least until the All-Star break, so that could probably hurt us. And then we also did lose Kevin Durant, so that's probably going to hurt us a little bit more. So getting back to the NBA Finals is going to be a lot tougher than in previous years. But that doesn't mean we didn't update our roster. We did upgrade by getting D'Angelo Russell in a sign and trade for Kevin Durant. So he left, but he didn't really leave us empty-handed. We kind of had something in return there, so that kind of helped us out a little bit. But on top of that, the Clippers are stacked, the Lakers are stacked, the Jazz are stacked, the Thunder are kind of losing it a little bit because they did lose pretty much their good players. The Rockets are going to be stacked going forward now. The Timberwolves are looking a little interesting, and just in general, a lot of these teams are no longer going to be pushovers. Look at Portland nowadays. Portland just signed Hassan Whiteside in a sign and trade. They still got Dame Lillard. They still got CJ McCollum. Those guys are still going to be really good, and are going to be looking to make a deep playoff run from what they did last year. So when it comes to, if you come to think about it, just keep in mind that the Western Conference is not going to look anything like in previous years. We could have 3 different teams with the #1 overall seed at different times in the season. We could have the Clippers up there the whole season. We could have the Warriors up there for some of the season. We could have the Jazz up there for some of the season. Even the Lakers up there for most of the season. So just in general, it's going to be a very tight race when it comes there. And you could possibly see the Western Conference end up winning the whole NBA championship at the end of the year, like they've been doing in recent years. But that's not to say that the Eastern Conference isn't doing any better. The Eastern Conference right now is looking like it's going to have to go through either Philadelphia or Milwaukee to make it to the NBA Finals. Just because Giannis is not looking to be slowing down anytime soon and is probably going to repeat as MVP from what projections are saying. Honestly, projections are one thing and actual physical game time is another. Or you can go through Philadelphia, who still has Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, and they just added Al Horford. So they're going to be a very, very tall lineup. I think on average they're about 6'6" to 6'5". So if you're going to have a floor full of 6'5" guys, that's just going to be too big for most teams, and they're just going to be dominant all throughout if Ben Simmons can hit a three. Now, with unfortunately those two teams being the number 1 and 2, the rest of the league in the Eastern Conference just looks a little mixed up here and there because Toronto no longer has Kawhi Leonard. And then Miami Heat did add Jimmy Butler, but at the same time, the Washington Wizards did lose John Wall for the year, but did re-sign Bradley Beal to an extension. So you're going to have a lot of these teams who are just kind of middle of the pack to just try and make a playoff push, and honestly, that might be the highlight of their year. Unfortunately, when it comes to the Western Conference, there's not going to be an easy game for the Warriors for us this year, especially because we do have Klay Thompson out. Our bench honestly does look very, very thin, so it's going to be pretty tough to see how we go going forward. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green are going to be doing most of the heavy lifting, with Klay Thompson just being out for most of the year. So honestly, I think it's going to be a Steph Curry, Draymond, and D'Angelo Russell show, honestly. So if those three guys could keep us afloat while Klay Thompson gets healthy, then I can see us making the playoff push. It's going to be really tough for us to even make it past the second or third round. So I'm not holding my breath on us making it back to an NBA championship. But it is a really, really good thing that we're still in that position to make it to the playoffs, knowing that what we've been through the last 5 years. So I'll be happy with the playoff push with us. The biggest thing that was talked about throughout the offseason was all these players moving from team to team. And if you think about it, it was a lot of players. I'm not going to mention all of them. I will mention a few here, but it's just crazy to think about how so much fluctuation in teams, so much transitions, so many transactions were being made, to the point where teams look completely different nowadays. For example, AD ended up going to the Pelicans. We had Kawhi Leonard going to the Clippers alongside with Paul George, Kyrie Irving and KD taking their talents over to Brooklyn. D'Angelo Russell coming to the Warriors, like I said previously. Jimmy Butler going to the Miami Heat. Russell Westbrook leaving the Oklahoma City Thunder, going to Houston on a trade that sent Chris Paul over to Oklahoma City. Kemba Walker is now in Boston, and what else have I missed? Mike Conley's now at Utah. Hassan Whiteside is over in Portland. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more transactions and deals and trades that went down during the preseason and offseason that honestly makes you think like, holy crap, that's a lot of transactions. That's a lot of deals that went down. Like I said, teams look completely different than they did last year. If you look at a team's lineup from last year, the year before, to this year, it's a completely different lineup, apart from maybe the Warriors just having D'Angelo Russell, and losing KD. But it's honestly, it's just going to be one of those crazy years where the NBA is probably going to be very, very fun to watch for the neutral fan. For a Warrior fan like me, I mean, I'm still going to have a lot of fun watching the Warriors, knowing that we shouldn't be just slamming through every single team throughout the season. It's going to make things so much more funner and so much more intense for us that now it's like we actually have an opponent who can probably kick our ass just as much as we can kick theirs. So just in that aspect of it, it makes it a lot more funner for average fans who they see two teams go up against each other, and you really don't know what's going to happen. If you're watching, for example, a Warriors and a Celtics game, it's like now it's very intense because both teams look pretty even. They're going to go head to head, and it's like you don't expect one team to go over the other. You could expect anything at that point. Now we still do have some top heavy teams like the Clippers and Lakers who are in win now mode, who if it's going to be championship or bust for them, honestly, that if they don't make it at least to the NBA Finals, it's kind of like a waste for a year. Because they did put in a lot of transactions. They did put in a lot of time on the court in the offseason making these deals for them to make it all the way to the NBA Finals. But unfortunately, only one team from each conference makes the NBA Finals. And that's what we will get into in just a sec. So like in other videos that I've made, I give you guys projections on where I think each team is going to land. I'm not going to do that this time around. I think I'm just going to give you guys my NBA champion, who they're going to go up against, and then the projected like MVPs and stuff like that, the awards. just to go through every single team is just a lot of work to get into. Honestly, for a video that should have been out maybe a week ago, I could have done that, but because I decided to just focus on the season as a whole, I'm just going to give you guys my projections on NBA champions and teams or individual awards after that. So let's get into it with Coach of the Year projection. Honestly, we do have a few candidates for that. People can say, "Oh, Steve Kerr should probably win it this year if the Warriors manage to make a deep playoff run without having KD and Klay for most of the year," which is a good case. People could also say that Brad Stevens over in Boston could also do the same thing if he makes that deep of a run, or if the Clippers can win the whole thing, then maybe it could be Doc Rivers it could be Doc Rivers this year. But there's just so many different choices, and honestly, I think my choice for Coach of the Year will be Doc Rivers this year because of the Clippers and how good they're going to be in that talent. I think Doc Rivers is a guy who, when he has talent and he's allowed to just be very hands-on with it, I think he could do great things. He's done it before with Boston teams in the past. He's done it with the Clippers when they had the whole Blake Griffin, CP3, and DeAndre Jordan era. And now with this new era of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and a lot of these young guys who are just scrappy physical players, I think he could do a lot with them to the point where it makes a big impression in the league and he can end up winning NBA Coach of the Year. So Rookie of the Year, a lot of people were already had their minds made up when it came to this with picking Zion Williamson, and I even had my mind made up on it. But unfortunately, with his injury being out at least 2 months, I think that completely just knocks him off Rookie of the Year, unless he just comes in and completely takes the league by storm, which I can see happening. But unfortunately, being gone for 2 months is just going to make things a little too difficult. And that's why I think my NBA Rookie of the Year is probably going to be Ja Morant out of Memphis Grizzlies. Just because this guy's going to be a ball handler. He's going to be controlling the game more often. He's very, very athletic, very springy. This guy makes some of the craziest dunks I've seen in a while. He's going to be a great facilitator for the team. And I know the Memphis Grizzlies aren't looking to win now, but I think if you could be that rookie who comes in as a top 5 pick and makes a big impact on your team right away, I think that's enough for where it can make you NBA Rookie of the Year. So Ja Morant will probably be my NBA Rookie of the Year. So 6th Man of the Year. This is a little different nowadays because I don't think Lou Williams will be the guy who wins it this year, honestly. I think it will be somebody else from LA. I think it'll be Kyle Kuzma. Now, Kyle Kuzma is currently out with an injury. He'll be day-to-day for the next few weeks, to where the point he's going to be playing on the bench for most of the game. And unfortunately, because the Lakers are stacked like they are and Kyle Kuzma is a little young, he's going to be coming off the bench and he's going to be in that death lineup at the end of the game where they're going to be closing out games and stuff like that. So honestly, if he does well in that role as a 6th man where he's coming off the bench getting 25 to 30 minutes a game, I think that puts him in very top contention with 6th Man of the Year. And honestly, I think he would be deserving of it if he can put up those numbers and if he can stay healthy. Now, if at any point the head coaches decide to throw him in as a starter, that will take him out of contention as a 6th man, and I might see Lou Williams take it again. But if Kyle Kuzma remains on the bench and remains healthy for most of the year and can control his health and can control his level of play, then I think it makes him a very, very, very worthy contender for 6th Man of the Year. Now, for one of my favorite awards to give out, it's Depoy, Defensive Player of the Year. Now, with Defensive Player of the Year, it's very, very tricky nowadays because they watch everything. It's no longer just blocks and steals now, it's defensive metrics. Now, it's how many points do you give up every time you guard a certain player, how many points do you give up off the ball, on the ball. The whole defensive metric system has just completely changed, apart from being where it used to be with just blocks and steals and turnovers and stuff like that. It's now to the point where they have a nerd up in the booth who watches every single player and just grades you specifically on everything pretty much. And Depoy is a lot harder to win than it used to be back in the day. A lot of people last year made a lot of cases that it could have been Draymond Green, Kevin Durant for just the amount of blocks and steals they were making, but it's no longer to that point anymore. Now we're seeing guys like Kawhi Leonard who are just an overall ball hawk to the point where if you have the ball and Kawhi Leonard is guarding, you might as well just give it up. He's not gonna let you score a single thing, but he will score on the other end, unfortunately. So I honestly do think that my Depoy of the Year will probably be Kawhi Leonard again, just because, like I said, this guy is a machine. This guy is impossible to try to score on at this moment. You could also make a great case for LeBron James being a Depoy because of his chase down blocks, but honestly, I don't think he'll be that on the ball defender where where a lot of people are going to want to give the ball to whoever he's guarding, just because it's going to be a little bit more difficult to try to score on him in general. You could also make another case for Giannis. You can make a case for Draymond Green. There's a whole lot of players you can make a case for, but I think Kawhi Leonard is just a little bit above a lot of those guys, to the point where I think he repeats as Depoy and honestly just makes a really good case overall, even just for MVP. Now, for MVP, it's a little tricky because I've come to grips that it's a lot more media based than it used to be. I honestly do think if the media has their decision on who they think is going to win, they're going to exploit this player by putting him on TV, by talking about him every chance they get. And that, in a way, kind of just doesn't make things fair, because there's a lot of players in the league who are just great overall players, but at the same time, they're not getting the same exposure as these other players who media already has their mind on. For example, people could already pick out LeBron, like LeBron's going to be MVP, and they'll just exploit him everywhere. That's a different case because LeBron is already everywhere, but Giannis in some cases has already been claimed as back-to-back MVP. I understand, if you're the best player on the best team, that should give you MVP, and a lot of times that is the case nowadays. And if you are the best team, you are going to get the most coverage, but at the same time, it just doesn't make it fair for a lot of the media coverage that people are getting now. That just seals the difference between Rookie of the Year or MVP or stuff like that. It doesn't make it fair that just because we're talking about them, that makes it seem it's okay for them to get picked for Defensive Player of the Year, honestly. Now, in my case, I do think I'm going to go a little bit of a different route when it comes to MVP. I think it still will be one of the best players on one of the best teams, but if it's not Kawhi Leonard and it's not Paul George, then I don't see it being anybody else, honestly, because I could see the case where Kawhi Leonard could probably win Depoy and can also win MVP if he can carry the LA Clippers to a certain point. I don't think it's going to be that same person who's going to just be leading stats after stats after stats, because if that were the case, you would get to James Harden every year, which I'm not a big fan of, honestly. I don't like the fact that he takes 40 shots and scores 40 points. That's not good offensive efficiency. If you're taking 40 shots, you should have at least anywhere between 60 to 80 points. It's just ridiculous on that case. Just because he puts up so many shots, it's going to be a little bit different for him. But now with having Russell Westbrook, it's just going to be completely different altogether. So honestly, I have a bit of a split when it comes to MVP. If it's not Paul George, if it's not Kawhi Leonard, I don't see who else it could be, honestly. Maybe you could make a case for the smaller guys. You can make a case for a Damian Lillard. You can make a case for Kemba. You can even make a case now with Steph Curry, who has to have a whole team on his back again, like he used to in the past. So there's a lot of there's a lot of transparency when it comes to MVPs. But I honestly do think it'll either be somebody on the Clippers like Paul George or Kawhi Leonard. Now, for NBA champions, you guys can kind of see where I'm going here. Defensive Player of the Year will be an LA Clipper. NBA MVP will probably also be a LA Clipper. Coach of the Year will probably be also a LA Clipper. That is because the LA Clippers, I think, are that good this year, just because of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George being two baseline to baseline players, can be great two-way players, can both defend and guard. And they could also score together, and it just makes things very difficult for other teams. I do think they'll finish with #1 overall in the West, #1 overall in the whole league when it comes to wins. I think Doc Rivers will do a great job with them to the point where it just makes things easier for them going forward, where they're just winning games in blowout fashions like they were, like the Warriors were in previous times. So NBA champion, I think it will be the Clippers, and I think in the finals they will take on I think they'll take on Philadelphia 76ers in the finals, honestly. I think it'll be an LA Clippers and Philadelphia 76ers final, where the LA Clippers probably wins it about 6 or 7, but we'll get to that point later on in the future when we get to it. I'll probably do a recap maybe at the All-Star break, maybe a little bit sooner, just to see where I'm going at with my projections, and see if I'm doing well or if I'm doing bad. Just let you guys know a little bit. So this is going to be my NBA season preview at the moment, guys. If you guys did enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications. Let your friends know about these videos. I am the Concerned Sports Fan, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.